Hello everybody, this is the Reacting American. I wanted to create a series of videos about economics. Yes, economics, I know it is not likely the topic that will make you the most popular guy at a party. However, it is important nonetheless. The poor understanding of and disinterest in economics has resulted in tremendous suffering in human history. This is unfortunate because there's no reason why economics can't be understood by your average Joe. I would like to keep these videos short in length. I think part of the reason people become disillusioned with economics is because it is often portrayed in overly mathematical terms, and people just get bored and/or intimidated by it very quickly. However, the degree to which people understand economics has a prolific effect on the rest of society, and thusly I am creating this series of videos to provide a sound explanation of economics, to repudiate the dim-witted and prejudiced vernacular of communist teachers and professors and the alt-left media, and provide, in what I hope are layman's terms, an accurate portrayal of a condition of all humanity. Now, the reason I start with such elementary level concepts is because there is, sadly, a substantial number of people who are astoundingly illiterate on this subject. I know way too many intelligent people who easily buy into anti-free market narratives based on nothing more than the logic that it sounds about right. Since our education fails us in economic instruction, and the alt-left media has a narrative that it pushes, even the most intelligent people are not going to get an alternate viewpoint. And that's what I hope to provide with this video series. This material will draw heavily from the works of Professor Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman, Ayn Rand, and other such economists and philosophers, because economics really does go beyond just the tangible resources and things around us. That is obviously heavily a behavioral type thing, which is probably why they do classify it as a social science, but the reason I want to distinguish it from social sciences in this video is because I want to keep it at a very, very basic level. I will put a link in the description to the book written by Thomas Sowell, Basic Economics, which I think outlines this subject very well and in a way that everybody can understand. This is an important subject to understand right now because our nation is somewhat at a crossroads. Since the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the Fed, our nation has moved steadily and increasingly more towards a centrally planned economy. There have been minor ticks, just little ticks towards the right under the administrations of perhaps Calvin Coolidge, Ronald Reagan, but overall, overwhelmingly, the movement has been leftward in terms of fiscal and economic policy. The first movement leftward happened technically under the Hoover administration. It's not a very well-known fact, but most of the New Deal programs under FDR were just a continuation of programs and economic strategies that the Hoover administration had already started, and the phrase New Deal was actually coined during the Hoover administration by Stuart Chase. Now, these programs and strategies under the Hoover administration were then taken and put on steroids under the administration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That was the first surge forward, or let's say it was the first surge leftward. Then you had another advancement under President Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, and the Great Society programs. And then you had another movement towards central planning under the administration of President Barack Obama. And his administration basically carried that so-called progressive socialist football to the 1-yard line, and we were very close to the point of breaking. The only reason we haven't, and this is where partisan politics gets taken out of it, it's just pure economics, is because we have a Federal Reserve that can essentially print money, so to speak. I'll get into that in another video. Like I always say, there's a lot of material here to cover. And if everybody is to understand why this is a problem, they need to have a basic working knowledge of economics, which is what I would like to present in these videos. So, in the interest of brevity and precision, this video will focus on the most basic substance of economics, the most bare bones concepts. First, what is economics? The best and most accurate definition of economics was given by distinguished British economist Lionel Robbins, who surmised, economics is the study of the use of scarce resources which have alternative uses. There are two key phrases to grasp here because they are fundamental to understanding economics as a whole: scarce resources and alternative uses. So let's first examine scarcity. Most definitions of economics, and you can verify this by searching for the definition on the internet, Google, Investopedia, whatever. Most definitions include, quote, the production, distribution, and consumption of resources, end quote, in their descriptions. Or something very similar to that, but generally speaking, the emphasis is on those three factors. This misses what is probably the most fundamental aspect of economics, which is scarcity. Because, as stated by the great Professor Thomas Sowell,
an economy is not just a system for producing goods and services and distributing them, because the Garden of Eden was not an economy, since there was no scarcity.
Since, by definition, such a utopia does not exist, scarcity of resources is inherent. If resources were infinite, there would be no need to economize, and subsequently there would be no economics. Scarcity effectively means resources are finite and desires are infinite. And since resources are scarce, all living things that want to survive must compete for them. Any definitions of an economy that do not include scarcity, and I've seen them, are quite frankly bullshit. To deny the existence of scarcity is to deny something easily observable and testable in science. Speaking of science, another common definition of economics usually quantifies it as a social science, which is, to me, somewhat misleading. You don't need more than one person to form an economy, although the addition of multiple parties certainly makes it a more complex economy. However, a caveman trying to survive by himself forms his own economy. He has scarce resources to work with: time, daylight, limited energy in his body transformed from his caloric intake. Each of these resources has multiple uses, and he must decide on what is the most efficient way to use them. He can use his time and energy to hunt animals or to forage for food. He can use sunlight to grow food from the earth or tan the hides of animals he has hunted. And any tools he has made can be used for his own purposes, stored in his inventory, or potentially bartered. Now, the addition of another person effectively forces the adoption of some form of economic system. Now, since resources are scarce, they must be rationed. And what all economic systems do, whether they're free market, centrally planned, feudal, whatever, is that they decide how that rationing is to be carried out. The existence of scarcity also means productivity is of utmost importance. Productivity is the concept of how scarce resources are used to produce goods. Basically what economists call turning input to output. What economics does is study the results of decisions made regarding the use of scarce resources. Like any science, it observes cause and effect relationships. So for me, economics was a required course in high school. However, a substantial amount of time was devoted to the study of personal finance and monetary systems and that kind of thing. Now, these are important subjects. However, economics goes way beyond the concept of money. Money does not factor into the caveman's economy, and yet it is a functioning economy nonetheless. And despite what many people think of economics, it is not basically, it's not the study of, some sort of recipe for making money. So the things I've covered, that is pretty much the basic, bare bones explanation of economics and what the study encompasses. So let's do a quick recap. Economics is the study of the use of scarce resources which have alternative uses. Scarcity. What everyone wants exceeds what resources exist. and we all must compete for them. And alternative uses, resources have multiple uses that we must choose from based on the constraints that we face. Productivity basically consists of decision making regarding how resources are used to produce output. The following videos in this series are not going to follow any linear pattern. This is not going to be a step-by-step lesson in economics because I think that's where it starts to get boring for a lot of people. And I'm also going to try and avoid using economic jargon. I'm going to try and keep that to a minimum. Instead, I'll present some sound definitions and explanations of key features of economics and contrast those with the conventional wisdom regarding economics. And with this video, I hope to lay a foundation for the following lessons to come. Alright, I'll leave it at that, folks. I appreciate your time in listening to this video. I hope you find it informative, and until next time, I am out of here.
Scarcity is the first lesson of economics. Now, the first lesson of politics is to forget the first lesson of economics.